Hey guys, welcome back to another video where we are going to look at how to install, configure and use the new AgilePoint Intelligent Process Automation app for SharePoint Online, which is now live on the SharePoint store. A few months back, I had blogged about the big announcement from Microsoft that they are deprecating the SharePoint 2013 style workflow as well as the SharePoint add-in for SharePoint Online. There are various timelines set by Microsoft to phase this out, and all the details are available in the blog post. In case you have not referred to that blog post yet, here is the blog post available on the product blog site. If you are an existing AgilePoint customer who uses AgilePoint for creating workflows or list forms in SharePoint Online, as I mentioned in my last blog post on this topic, the good news is that there is very minimal impact and AgilePoint Professional Services team can work with you to migrate your SharePoint environment to the new SharePoint app. Your current environment is configured to use the older app, which was a SharePoint add-in using provider-hosted app model and had components such as web paths and workflow launcher, which needs to be cleaned up and replaced with new mechanism, which is based on SharePoint framework extension and webhooks. Existing AgilePoint apps for SharePoint which you have created over the years will continue to work as is. Please note that in order to use the new SharePoint app, you need to be on AgilePoint NX version 9, software update 1 or above. Let's look at how to install, configure and use the new AgilePoint Intelligent Process Automation app if you are starting fresh with the AgilePoint SharePoint app. Migration for existing customers will be covered in a separate video. So as a first step, what we are going to do is we are going to navigate to our AgilePoint portal and I'm going to log in using my AgilePoint ID. Now this is an optional step. In case you have already signed up for AgilePoint using your Microsoft Entra ID, using one of these two options, it was previously called MS Azure Active Directory. So if you have done that, you can skip this step. In my case, I have not associated my Microsoft Entra ID with my AgilePoint subscription. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to log in with my AgilePoint ID. I'm going to go ahead and click sign in. Now, as a tenant administrator, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to settings, administration. As you can see right now, only AgilePoint ID is enabled. So I'm going to go ahead and select my MS Azure Active Directory or Entra ID option. And it is going to tell me that I'm going to be redirected to the MS Azure Active Directory or Entra ID screen. And I would need to be logged in as a global Azure AD admin for me to grant permission to the AgilePoint app. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I'm already logged in as my global tenant admin. So now I'm on Microsoft screen and it is telling me that a permission is requested for nx1.com. I'm going to go ahead and click accept. It is going to tell me what kind of permissions are required. We need bare minimum permissions. Now it is going to run the flow again for the portal. So one flow was for the server, AgilePoint server. Another flow is for AgilePoint portal. And it is again telling me all the permissions which are required. As I said, these are the bare minimum permissions. We just read the user profile. Don't make any changes to your Azure AD. I'm going to go ahead and click accept. Now it is telling me that it has been enabled, and as you can see now I have the second authentication type which is enabled over here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign out and I'm going to log into my AgilePoint portal using the Azure Active Directory option. So I'm now logged in as this new user. Now, what we are going to do next is I'm going to switch to my SharePoint portal. So I have a vanilla SharePoint site collection created over here. It's a team site. I'm going to go and click on the configure option, add an app. From SharePoint store, find more apps on SharePoint store. I'm going to search for AgilePoint. Click on the AgilePoint Intelligent Process Automation app. You can see all the screenshots over here, all the details around what functionality is available within the platform as well as the app. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add this app to the site, and it is going to ask me that, okay, there is a CDN endpoint which will be accessing data from your SharePoint logged in as a user. So it's asking me for user impersonation permission. You want to perform all the actions as a logged in user. And the CDN endpoint is nothing but it is hosting all the AgilePoint files for the web part. So that is going to read data out of your SharePoint. So you are going to go ahead and give it permission to read the data and impersonate the user who is logged in. And we are going to enable this app for all the sites. Go ahead and click add. Now once the app is added, it is going to tell me, because I have requested for a user impersonation permission, that needs to be approved by my Azure AD tenant administrator. So it is going to ask me to do that. I will go ahead and click OK. Click back to the demo site, which is my SharePoint site. And I'm going to navigate to the admin center. Now I can do it from my Azure portal as well, but I'm going to show you how to do it from within the Microsoft 365 portal. So I'm going to go ahead and say show all on the admin center. Again, all of these actions have to be done as an administrator. I'm going to click on SharePoint. Under SharePoint, go to Advanced, API Access. You'll see a pending API access request called AgilePoint NX. Go ahead and select that and click Approve. It's just asking for user impersonation permission. Again, whoever is the logged in user in SharePoint, you want to kick off the workflow or perform actions as that user, and that's the permission that I'm asking for. So I'm going to go ahead and click Approve. Approve. Now that permission has been approved, so we can close our admin center. Now our app has been added. Now next what we are going to do is we are going to navigate back to the AgilePoint portal, go to Manage, and we are going to create our access token to connect back from AgilePoint to SharePoint. Now this access token is going to be used in my applications for connecting back while the process activities are getting executed. It will make a call back using this access token, or any lookups on the form. This access token would be used. Now, one big thing which has changed between the older app and the new app is, in the older app, we had access to things such as remote event receivers, which could have gone back and deployed the AgilePoint configuration list as you are adding an app. Now, remote event receivers too have been deprecated, and that's not available. So we need to provide a mechanism so that you can push the AgilePoint configuration app to your SharePoint environment, and the access token would be used for that as well. It's used for multiple purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and go to App Builder, Global Access Token, add a token, search for SharePoint, click on it, click Next. Now SharePoint supports a lot of authentication types. Now the preferred authentication type as per Microsoft documentation now is OAuth 2 authentication and Azure AD app only token. So we are going to do that. Now Microsoft has a documentation on how to do that, and over the years it keeps changing. So I would recommend that you refer to Microsoft documentation on how to create an Azure AD app only token. I'm going to show you the process which is there as of today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to my Azure portal, and I'm going to register an app. So I'm going to click on app registration. I'm going to say new registration and give it a name. Let's call it AgilePoint NX app token. I'm going to say this token should be only accessible to accounts in the organization directory. Now you can select whatever is applicable in your case and go ahead and click register. I'm going to just open a notepad real quick. I'm going to save some values. This is the name of my token. Now it has generated a client ID. I'm going to copy that. This will be needed later on. And it has also generated a tenant ID. I'm going to copy that as well. This will be needed as well later on. Next, I'm going to go ahead and select Manage, expand it. Under Manage, go ahead and click on Certificates and Secret. Now there are various ways of authenticating. I'm going to select certificates. Now in my case, I have already generated the self-signed certificates. You can ask your administrator to generate self-signed certificates which are protected by passwords. I'm going to locate my certificate file, click add. Now next what I'm going to do is click on API permission. I'm going to click on add permission, select SharePoint, application permissions, and I'm going to ask for full control. Now you can select whichever is applicable to you. In our case, we will be doing full control because our process activities can even go in and deploy lists, libraries, or even for that matter, take some of the admin action. So I'm going to go ahead and say add permission. So as you can see, at this point of time, these two permissions are there, and I'm going to go ahead and grant admin consent to use these. So as you can see, now it has been changed to granted permission. Now with that, our setup on the Azure portal is done. I'm going to go back to my access token screen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly copy the name of my access token. I need the site collection URL to which I'm going to connect to. I'm going to copy it from here, from SharePoint. It is going to ask me to upload the private key of the certificate. I'm going to go ahead and select the PFX file. It's going to ask me for client ID. Tenant ID. And it is going to ask me for the certificate password. This will be different based on whatever certificate you have generated. I clicked on test connection. It tells me the connection is successful. It tells me my access token is all looking good. I'm going to go ahead and click save. Now before I do that, now I selected the Azure AD app only token because that's what the new Microsoft 365 tenants are configured with by default. Now in your case, if you want to use some of the legacy options, you can always enable that on your Microsoft 365 environment. You can even go with the username password based one as well. By default, that is disabled nowadays. I'm going to go ahead and click save. So my access token has been defined. Now again, logged in as AgilePoint tenant administrator, I'm going to go ahead and click settings. You will see a new option in the settings module, SharePoint Online App. All that is doing is making sure I can deploy my configuration list to SharePoint. As I mentioned just a few minutes back, there is no remote event receiver available anymore. So you need to tell SharePoint that which sites that configuration list should be created. So I'm going to go ahead and click add. It's going to ask me for site URL. I'm going to copy it. For access token, remember we created an access token just now. That's what it is going to come in handy with. So whichever is an access token for your SharePoint site collection, select that. Different sites can have different access tokens. That is absolutely fine. It automatically discovers the information. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click validate. Everything is looking good, and I'll go ahead and click add. Now this process might take a few seconds. Now once this is done, I can see a record being created over here. I can always go in and remove my record from here, and that would have removed my configuration list as well. So we do provide you all the management capabilities, but let's navigate back to SharePoint. Site contents. And as you can see now, AgilePoint configuration list is already deployed with all the required values. So it has all the required values, the default values already pre-configured for me. Since AgilePoint portal already knew its context, what is the portal URL, the tenant names, the tenant URL, everything is already pre-configured for you, as you can see over here. Okay, so now we have got the access token done. We are going to stay on your SharePoint site. Now we are going to add our web part. Now remember, we had already added the app. Now there are two ways of adding the web pack. The first one, I'm going to go in and say add a page. I'm going to select blank template, close all these getting started options, select blank template, and I'll click on create page. Once the page is created, we can go ahead and add a section. I'm going to say one column section. A web part, if you remember, is a full page experience usually. And then I'm going to go in and say add a web part, and you can search AgilePoint Work Center in there. And now the Work Center is rendering, and I can go ahead and click publish. And as you can see, now the Work Center is rendering right over here. Now the other way of doing this is I can stay on the home page. There's a full page concept. Go to new page, click on apps. You will see AgilePoint NX Work Center listed over here in the full page experience as well. You can go ahead and select that. Click create page. You can give it a name. And click save. So it's now rendering in the full page experience instead of within the sections. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to keep this URL open. I'm going to open SharePoint in a different tab so that we can come back to it. Now next we are going to see how to associate list forms and workflows with lists and libraries. So I'm going to go to site content, click on new list. I'm going to use one of the out of the box lists. We're going to use work progress tracker. I'm going to use this template, call the list work progress tracker. I'm going to click on don't add these features, some optional features, click next. Got it. So my list is now created. Next, I'm going to associate AgilePoint list forms with this list to override the out of the box list form. So if at this point of time I click on new, I see the standard list form available within SharePoint. I'm going to go ahead and click on this ribbon icon called AgilePoint. In this case, we are changing the list form association. So I'm going to go ahead and click plus. For content type, I'm going to select item. For the form-based application, I've already got one sample application created in my environment. I'm going to use that. And as soon as I select it, it tells me what will be the new item page, edit item page, and display item page. This is an AgilePoint concept. I can go ahead and click submit. Navigate back to the main menu. Close this dialog. Now I'm going to go ahead and click refresh. Now at this point of time, if I click on plus button, instead of the standard SharePoint form, an AgilePoint form opens up. I can always navigate back as well. I'm going to give it a name, priority, progress, assign to, I'm going to just select AP test 1, start date, due date, and go ahead and click submit. As you can see, a list item got created within that SharePoint list. Now I can always open it in edit mode as well. And again, it is going to redirect me to an AgilePoint form instead of the standard SharePoint list form. I'm going to navigate back. So that's the list form functionality. Now let's look at the workflow association. So I'm going to navigate to documents library over here. I'm going to click on AgilePoint. I'm going to associate a workflow which I've already deployed. Let's call this document review. I'm going to kick off a workflow when a new item is created. I can also kick off a workflow when an item is changed. In this case, I'm going to only select then when a new item is created. I'm going to go ahead and select my app. And what version of the app do I want to use? I'm going to say latest version of the app which contains my workflow should be used. Go ahead and click submit. Navigate to main menu. Close this. Upload a file attachment. Now, while that is happening, few things to keep in mind is that SharePoint sends out an item chain event notifications asynchronously. Workflows might start in a different order or with a delay due to SharePoint queuing. This is usually around 1 minute, but can go up to 5 minutes as well in certain instances. For each SharePoint notification, the latest state of the item that was changed will be used to initiate the workflow instance. Therefore, for each SharePoint webhook notification, a changed list item can only trigger one workflow instance while it is running. If once the previous workflow instance is completed, you can always kick a new one on that as well if you have associated it with the change event of the document upload. I'm going to go ahead and click refresh. And as you can see, there is an in progress link which is available. If I go ahead and click it, it opens my process viewer. I can look at the tasks as well, the workflow status page which you used to see in the previous app. It is similar to that, just that it is now opening in the full screen mode. If I go back to my task list, click refresh, the task is now assigned to me. I'm going to go ahead and go to my inbox, tasks, open this task, click approve, and click submit. Now, if I navigate back to my document library, you will see the workflow has completed. So with this, we come to the end of this video. As you can see, the new app is fully functional. It lets you create the list forms and associate it with your SharePoint list, as well as associate workflows with your lists and document libraries as well. And there is a web part which is available to manage your tasks. The whole modern work center experience is now available within the new SharePoint app as well. Thanks a lot for your time.